Okay.
Have a look. The meeting is being live streamed. Got it? Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. I've just used chat. ASA.
Hi, Saba, are you there? Just want to check that everything is.
Is Saba there?
Yeah, for those who are listening in, we're just doing a final sound check. And hopefully we can see ourselves. Rizvia, can you hear me? Everything all right from your end?
Completely, and I can see the screen. I can see you in the corner as well. Can you see me? Can you hear me? Brilliant. That's great.
Okay, so we're just going to wait for a thumbs up from Saba before we go ahead with the session.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see on Facebook we've got some people already logged in. Feel free in the comments section to introduce yourself if you're a parent or a student. Now, with these things, there's a little bit of a lag with the time. So if you do see any pauses, just ignore that. Okay, we've got a hello from Saba. So I think we're going to go ahead and start our session. Okay, we've got a hello from Saba. So I think we're going to go. Right, my name is Dr. Afrosa Ahmed. I'm a GP and I'm delighted to be joined by Dr. Rizvia Khan, who is a friend and a colleague. And what we're going to do is do a 40 minutes question and answer session. And then hopefully have, sorry, I've got that the wrong way around. We're going to do a presentation for 40 minutes and then do a Q&A. So just before we start, I'm one of the admins of the OUJ Facebook group. And OUJ is a platform for university applications for all secondary school support. And we support parents, carers, and students. We also have a YouTube channel, and this will be uploaded on there, as well as all past webinars and classes. Okay. So who are we? I think Rizvia's qualifications are probably quite modest in this sense. I think she does a lot more. She's a general practitioner like I am, and she's an Associate Dean for Health Education England. She's also a medical examiner at St Helier's and a Deputy Medical Director for NHS England, as well as supporting students and families for medical school coaching, mentoring and interviewing, and is a medical educator. I've been a GP for about 20 years, practicing in Harrow currently, and I teach at UCL Medical School. I do CPP and personal tutoring there. I also do some ad hoc teaching at King's College London, where I qualified from, and I have a special interest in mindfulness, which I combine medicine and I teach medical students that. I sit on medical school interview panels and mentor children. And I think the most important thing is that both of us have been through this process as parents, so we understand both sides of this coin. So what are we here for? We're going to give you the ultimate guide to medical school interviews. And to break it down, you want to know, what do medical schools look for? Now, medicine is not like any other degree. It's a professional degree. At the end of it, you're going to get a job, which is why, to some extent, we say it doesn't really matter where you get your degree from, because you'll be a doctor at the end of it. But the medical school process, the interview process, is to test those areas that they can't get from the personal statement, that they can't get from your academics, your GCSE and your A-levels. So areas like communication, for example, is a big part of the medical school interview. So interviews are usually designed, and I think this is a very good summary from Medical School Council website. They're designed to test your suitability and aptitude to study medicine and become a doctor. Now, I think Medical School Council is a very underused resource, so they have a section on interviews, so I would encourage everyone to have a look at that. And medicine is like a series of hoops. You have to pass the entrance exams, you have to get GCSE and A-levels. And I think people don't appreciate how much importance the interview process is. I'm sure Rizvia has seen this as well. We've seen academic, very highly capable students who have actually come around and not received any offers because they haven't passed the interview. So it's worth putting prep into the interview, put some time. And remember, most 17, 18-year-olds are not natural at interview process, but with some preparation, this can be overcome.
Yeah, definitely on that point as well, Afrosa. I think what we tend to find, certainly what I found as well, is that up to the point of your personal statement, and personal statements are being submitted by the end of this week as an absolute deadline. It's usually the 15th of September or so. It had been changed slightly during COVID. But up until this point, what counts is your academics, what you've done, what you've done, what you've achieved, what predicted grades you're going to be given.
Rizvia, I think there's quite an echo. I just want to check.
Okay, let me try to put. I'll try to put my earpods on and
put
see.
Your earpods in. Let's see if that was.
Is that better? Hello.
Yeah, I think that's solved the trick.
Okay,
yeah.
fantastic.
Can you start again your point? Because I was really fascinated by some of that.
Oh, sure. Okay, so what a lot of medical or aspiring medical students don't seem to fathom, actually, as much as they should do, is that up until the point that they actually go for interview, everything that's taken into account has been academic. So it's been their GCSEs, their predicted grades, what they've done so far. Let's say, for example, in if there were teacher assessed tags and CAGs as teacher assessed grades and course assessed grades up until that point. And everything and references from your teachers. So everything up until that point is academic, which is fantastic. Okay, and it gives you a head start. You've also got your UCAT score by that time. You would not have had your BMAT because you haven't sat it. BMAT is coming up next Tuesday, isn't it? But after that, the skills that you need for interview is completely different. So just as you said, Afrosa, we have seen so many, unfortunately, we've seen so many capable students who are getting, who have been predicted AAA stars, have got huge, humongous UCAT scores, GCSEs, and then they can't get through the interview. So it's really, really important to develop the skills needed for interview. And it's not just simply a case of answering the questions, but I'll hand it back over to you.
Thank you, Rizvia. I was trying to listen to those gems and answer some questions, but I thought there was an echo, but apparently I've been assured by Saba there isn't. That was wonderful, actually. So some of these we've kind of captured about what our medical school's looking for. And a lot of these are personal attributes and values. And I think this is a list the two of us, Rizvia and I, kind of put together, that common things that come up in the interviews and that they're testing for. And essentially, you need to be able to express your ideas, kind of follow an argument, say things coherently with some structure, And I know this isn't natural for a lot of people, but that's the whole point of doing some of these sessions. So let's take some of these qualities. Good communication skills, as I've alluded to already, is essential. Not just communicating to patients, which is the obvious one, but communicating to the public, like Rizvia and I are doing through online now, but also to meetings, ward rounds, teaching. It's such a big part of being a doctor. Being leadership skills. So being a doctor is being a leader, leading patient care. So this is something that we'll be alluding to in some of the stations. Compassion and empathy is something that's a big part of what's going on. We would like to know that you're breaking bad news in a way that's nice, that you have that caring attitude. And so that's something that comes up time and time again as a station. I think resilience is a big one. It's a demanding degree, 5 to 6 years. So you need to show that you can see it through. And these medical schools are putting a lot of money and time and effort. So they want to know that you're worth investing in.
Absolutely. Now, and sorry.
No, carry on, please, Rizvia, please.
There's a bit of a lag there. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the most important thing is making sure that you're able to answer every part of those. One thing that you brought up, resilience, it came up really big last year in last year's interviews because of COVID and how people adapted and acclimatized to the situations at hand. Also knowing the challenges as well, and being able to adapt through resilience. Is really important, and we can certainly talk about that in a little bit more depth later.
Definitely. And I think, Rizvia, you agree with this one as well, that you won't be offered a place without an interview. I don't know any situation where that's the case.
Yeah, so with other degree courses you can, so law, engineering and so forth, you will you don't need to to do an interview. But the whole reason why medical schools offer interviews is they want to check your suitability for the course, and the way that they do that is through interview. It's a completely different skill set, and it's something that, you know, that's what we're going to be talking about, focusing on other later, or during today's session.
Now, I've just got to a comment that some people can't see the presentation.
I can't see the presentation either.
No.
Yeah,
let's.
I can see a front screen.
Yeah. Let's is it, if someone can put on the chat, can anyone see the presentation? Someone didn't know the presentation isn't coming up. Right, let me try this again.
I can see you now, so that's changed. Brilliant.
Right.
There you go.
That's what happens in life, isn't it? But
actually, that was quite good, because we were just talking ad hoc, so that's great, off the hook. That's great. And I think whilst your presentation is coming up as well, I think just to reiterate to everybody out there, is really you can practice interviews in any which way you can. If you can get interviews through, let's say, for example, discussing things with your family, with your friends, with your siblings, you don't always need somebody formal. It is always good to have somebody else, somebody who's not a family member, let's say, for example, because then they will be able to assess you and critique you. And the most important thing about interview feedback is it's all about the critique. I know that Afrosa, when we've been doing this over the years, I know that when I've seen a student right at the beginning, really, I would be grading them. I usually grade them out of 5. I go up to about 3.5, and after 3.5, I go to 4, then 4.25, 4.5, 4.75, and so. And a lot of my students start off at a 2, 1, 2, 3, okay, as in like not even gradable. If you really want to get ahead, and especially with certain medical schools, you're needing to really aim for those high 4s. So 4.25, 5. I know, I don't know if you remember when we were interviewing for Barts a couple of years ago, I know kids who didn't get through with a 4. Yeah, and because the quality of the interviews, also the interviews as well, you'll be given dates. What I would probably say is, please do not take the last date. given, thinking that you will that you'll have more time to practice, always go for the middle or middle to last. That's just a thing that I usually tell my students. But what about you, Afrosa? Is that something that you would?
Yeah, no, I just kind of was thinking about the adaptability, because we lost the presentation and I was trying to go back and get that. So I hope we've demonstrated that really well. And if that was an interview, that's something that I could have mentioned, that we had about 60 people watching and no presentation, and we didn't realize till way into the, the talk.
I think that's everybody being very polite. That's why.
So actually, if that was an interview question, what I would have said was I was doing a presentation. I didn't realize that they couldn't see the presentation. So reflecting back, what I would have done is do a test run. So that's a classic example of how to answer that interview question.
Fantastic. It's always good to be to do things spontaneously. So that's great.
That's all right. Okay, so actually on that note, Rizvia, I think it's your turn.
Okay, so how to prepare. Okay, so I don't know if you guys want to put it into the chat yourself. How would you think that you could prepare? What kind of ways? I mean, I don't know if you can put that into the chat. How do you think you can prepare?
Yeah, people can put it on the chat. Yeah.
If they want to. I mean, there's just a few ideas, and keep putting it into the chat. That's absolutely great. But there's no book at this moment in time. I don't know about how you feel about this, Afrosa, but certainly from my experience going through the pandemic, I can't find any book at this time that incorporates COVID or COVID type questions into a book at the moment. Most of these books are outdated, and so that leaves you with what? And I think it leaves you with actually finding out things yourself and actually adapting your answers to fit in things like, for example, adaptability, resilience, COVID, how you've expressed yourself in COVID, how things have changed as a result of that. That makes the interview makes interview prep slightly more different than it ever has been. I would normally recommend only one book, and believe me, they don't pay me any commission. I don't know them or anything, so I don't have any vested interest. But I usually go for the Picard, the ISC Medical School interview book. It's the green one with the ECG tracing at the front of it. So that is quite good as your staple book if you want to know about things that aren't going to be changing so much, such as, for example, communication skills, and how to deliver bad news, for example, things like that. The other way is actually keeping up to date. It's really important to be part of a group. Now we run, we don't run, we're certainly admins of a group called the Year 12 to Year 13 Medics Dentist group, which is fantastic. And it really does keep people up to date. There are some times where it gets a little bit active, but I think that will kind of die down slightly now that personal statements are all going to be handed in by the end of this week. But also verified courses. Now, if you don't mind me plugging, I do a hot topics course, and that hot topics, there's a bit of history behind it. I realized when my son, and I know your son has started medical school as well. My son is just about to finish medical school, so he's in the final year of Barts at the moment. And when it came to his time, we had nothing. There was very little. There were a few commercial organizations that we went to, and to be honest, I wasn't really that satisfied. And then I thought to myself, gosh, I'm sure I can do a better job. And I kind of created a curriculum for my own son. And said, look, you need to know about this. And you may think, gosh, she must have so much time on her hands, but it's not. It's called sheer parental desperation there. And so I created a bit of a curriculum, just looking at the kind of things that I thought would come up in medical school interviews. And then I thought, once my son got in, alhamdulillah, thank goodness he got in, after all that, then what I thought is that I can't let this go and let's share it with everybody else. So I shared it with a few people on certain groups. They liked it, then I made it a little bit bigger, and now we're getting really good numbers coming to the Hot Topics courses. And this is a curriculum that I've devised that covers absolutely everything you need to know for medical for medical school interviews. We've gone through 4 out of 6, and the next 2 are ethics, which are going to be big ones, but we can go on from there. That's great. The other thing that you want to be doing is, again, prepping with your friends, family, and so forth. The topics that are usually covered. Now, this is really important because we both interview for BARTS, and Afrosa, you can give us a bit more insight into UCL and King's as well. And the topics that certainly for BARTS is that they look at, it's usually 3. It's usually kind of categorized in 3 sections. The first section is usually about your motivation. Okay, motivation, what you know about the NHS structure, its function, MDTs, etc. You know, a lot of people put in the word MDT, they don't know what it is, so they try to test that out. The second section is usually the qualities and more what we call some people call it soft skills. I would call them human skills. So things like, for example, communication, empathy, resilience, and all the different types of questions that can go alongside those kind of human skills. And then the last section is usually ethics. Now, it could be breaking bad news. It could, at the moment, they're not doing so much. I don't know if you've noticed, Afrosa, but they're not doing so much breaking bad news because of the fact that it's remote and that you would need another actor or another actor to get on board. So that then becomes a little bit tricky with the technology. But certainly, they will ask you, how would you break bad news to so-and-so, or how would you do X, Y, and Z? Okay. Can you see me then? Okay. And then medical advances come, and they tend to float in and out, and the challenges for sure are usually incorporated within a question such as, knowing the challenges that exist at the moment, how would you demonstrate resilience? Do you see where that's going? Mm-hmm. So you're incorporating 2 things in one, but certainly there's a lot more, but it's basically the kind of framework that they use, usually in about 3 parts. Some universities like King's, they love ethics, okay? And some other universities, they love scenarios. So it depends on which universities, but across the board, if you look at those things, that's pretty much what you will have. Yeah.
Great, Rizvia. I'm just going to say, I've just been kind of keeping an eye on the comments, and there's some fantastic ideas of how to keep abreast of everything. I also going to do a disclaimer here. I know UCL is on the presentation, but this talk has nothing to do with UCL. I'm just borrowing their Zoom function, so it's because I work there. So I feel I owe them a disclaimer. Right. I was going to ask you a question, Rizvia, and it's come out of my mind, but I'll do that at the end. Let's do, when do interviews take place? Now, most of them start around December, January, but some as early as November. We saw that in King's last year. And typically the stronger scoring, high scoring UCAT candidates will be interviewed first, and the same with the BMAT. The strong candidates will be interviewed first. Last year we saw interviews going up until April, March. So even though they advertise various interview dates on their website, that may extend, especially if they don't feel they've got enough high caliber students to interview. So this is just a rough guide. Actually, Rizvia, the point I was going to make is you made a good point about actors. I don't think I saw any during the pandemic of medical schools using actors, but I think we might see that again as society is opening back up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think so. Yeah, I think certainly with sharing screens and conference calling, then you can have a 3rd person or even a 4th person, like we've seen in BARTS as well.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we're going to talk about the types of interviews, and if you get an interview, I think you should be really proud of yourself. It's an accomplishment. The medical schools are impressed with your application, and they want to know a bit more about you. And essentially there are 2 types of interviews. There's the MMI and there's the panel, and let's just talk about a little bit about each one. So we've got the MMI, which is kind of multiple stations, and you do like a circuit. So it can be anything from 5 to 10 minutes, and you answer one main question, and then the interviewer will do a series of follow-up questions. Everybody is asked the same question, so there's an element of standardization here. Each station is independent of each other station. So I always say, don't worry if you've done badly in one station. Pick yourself up, forget about it, use that resilience that we mentioned, and you can score highly in the next station and overcome your marks in the bad station. So MMI is typical as where we see actors. In King's, we show you a picture, and there's usually a set mark scheme. So you will get a mark at the end of it. And these are typical areas that are tested in the MMI. I think Rizvia has touched on some of them. Your motivation, empathy, teamwork, leadership, communications, things that come up time and time again that we've noticed. And this is typically what a mark scheme would look like. So as an interviewer, I will have this. Sometimes it's a paper-based sheet or on iPad. And there are various domains that they're testing. Now, some of the other medical schools might test other domains. There might be a little bit more. And some medical schools might give you a score out of 10. This one is out of 5. So I just wanted you to get a flavour that at the end of the day, you're going to get a score. And just because you do badly, let's say you got a 1 in one next section, you can still do well by getting 5 in another section. So really don't dwell if one station has got wrong, for example. And then if you can see at the bottom, there's a blank box usually for the interviewer to give their comments. So if we're concerned about a particular client, a particular candidate, we'll put our thoughts there. For example, in COVID, if I thought someone had someone in the room, I might put a comment there. Anything where we're really concerned about this candidate, because at the end of the day, a lot of candidates want feedback. So our comments do carry weight there. And my advice would be to look at the website of the medical school. We're given generic advice, but if you want specific advice about the med school, this is something I've taken from Manchester. And they've said the aim of their interview is to determine if a candidate satisfies our non-academic criteria. And again, they're talking about values and behaviours. They want to demonstrate that you have interpersonal skills. You're able to communicate effectively. Know that you are a well-rounded individual. This is all from their website. They actually have some recommended reading, which I agree with. The GMC documentation on good medical practice, the NHS values, and again, the Medical School Council website has some interview prep, so I would definitely have a look at that. They've got some topics they say come up in their MMI stations, and these are some of those, and I think we've covered some of those. And their format is also on the website, which is 4 or 5 stations, about 7 minutes long. Typically, you would get a gap in between stations to gather your thoughts or read the crib sheet for the next station. With Manchester, they don't provide any information in advance. There's no reading or writing. You might notice in some medical schools, they provide an article or they provide a graph that they want you to interpret data. So do have a look at each medical school website once you get your interview offer. So a little bit more about panel. This is more kind of an intimate style of interviewing. It's more conversational. It does kind of depend on rapport between you and the interviewer. It could be anything from 15 to 40 minutes long. There's a more heavy focus on your communication skill because it's that one-to-one, you're not going around stations. Typically there's 2 interviews, so one of us will be marking, well, both of us will be marking, and one will be actively listening and asking the questions. And typically we take turns to ask the questions. Some medical schools will have access to your personal statement, so do go over that. And as I said, so some panel interviews have an article as well. Right, this is my medical school, so UCL, that's on their website, all the areas that they're testing on the interview. Nothing surprising there, I think we've covered a lot of that. Rizvia, I'm going to pass to you.
Thank you so much. Okay, examples of interview questions. Okay, I don't know if you've got another slide for this because I could give you a million different ones. I'm just on that panel one as well, and actually just going on, just taking a few steps back as well about panel and MMI. With MMI, just as Afrosa said, really, really important. Nerves can get the better of you, and especially in station 1. Okay, so if they do not panic. Just remember, there's usually 7 stations or more, okay? And you can redeem yourself on the other 6. Okay, but do not let one station ruin every single other one. The same with panel. Now, the thing is that the people who are on the other side of the panel are going to be people like myself, Afrosa, academics, and usually student ambassadors as well. And the student ambassadors are usually there to kind of like soften you and like, kind of like, have this kind of peer-to-peer kind of like rapport with you as well. But it's really important that you come across well. Part of that interview is not, as I said right at the beginning, not just about answering questions, it's how you come across. That is half of it. The other half is answering the question, okay? Because I know some people who have kind of like fluffed up on some of the answers, or they've really kind of not quite got there, but actually they came across really personable and they came across as really passionate about what they want to do. And I think we're human as well. We give them the benefit of the doubt. Obviously, scores matter, okay, but there's also a global score as well that is usually asked for. And we can certainly put in there any kind of comments as to whether this person would be suitable for medicine. But let's just go on to some typical questions. Now, I always say, now I've got another set of 6 what we call medical blast interview sessions that are going to start in November. Now, almost every single one of these sessions, almost every single one of these sessions, I start off with the questions: why do you want to study medicine? Your motivation for studying medicine. Excuse me. Despite the fact that there's so many challenges at the moment, why would you want to study medicine? Okay, what personal qualities do you have? So this is coming into almost the realms of section 2 about the communication, the soft skills, the human skills. Okay, what personal qualities do you actually possess? Let's say the top 3 that you would have that will make you a suitable candidate for medicine. Now, ethics can come in many. Ethical questions can come in many different forms. It could be through breaking bad news, okay, but it could also be through rationing of resources. Okay, for example, if you had 2 people who both needed a liver transplant, who would you choose? Okay, and then there's a blurb about each person who would have that. If you inherited £1 billion, how £1 million, let's say £1 billion is quite a bit. If you inherited £1 million, where would you give it and how and why? Okay, so all these kind of things. So ethics, many different ethical kind of issues questions can come up with that. EDI is equality, diversity, inclusion. That comes into ethics. How do you treat people, and how would you like to be treated as well? Professionalism, really important. So this comes into the ethos of the GMC's GMP. So the GMC is the regulatory body for medicine, just like the GDC is the regulatory body for dentists. But they have produced the equivalent, I suppose, if you like, of the Hippocratic Oath all those thousands of years ago of GMP, which is what is deemed as good medical practice. That's under review at the moment, actually. But good medical practice is what we would assume doctors would be working off. And I could go on about that forever, actually, to be honest. Hot topics, lots of hot topics. What's hot in the news at the moment? One of my courses, we're going to be talking about oh gosh, I've forgotten his name, but I think so. Archie, and you must please put it in the chat if you can. But Charlie Gard, who gives who makes decisions about who lives and dies? For example, let's talk about other kind of hot topics, stem cell research, the ethics behind it. Let's talk about even newer research, how to smell out, I think it was smelling out Parkinson's, if you remember. So, all these kind of things. So these new research, but also advances in medical practice as well. Role playing, that comes quite often. At the moment it hasn't. It may seep back into certainly for either MMI or even panel, actually. And calculations. So calculations, you wouldn't be expected to do anything more than probably GCSE maths level, but you may need to, I won't say will, but we will previously, but now may need to do some calculations. Can you calculate dosages? Can you in milliliters, microliters, etc.? Okay. Article analysis. Now, BARTS actually give you an article. They'll give you this a few weeks beforehand, before your interview. You will need to read it. It is not a reading comprehension. You've got to remember that. What it is a basis upon which examiners will extrapolate. Okay, so last year's BARTS, as we all know, as a lot of us know, it was all about COVID. But what they extrapolated was really important: health inequalities. And that is really, really important for you to think laterally and think, why have they given me this article? Okay. The year before, it was about utilitarianism. And a lot of people didn't know what utilitarianism was. But that didn't matter, because it was the extraction of what did you take away from this article. So that's really important as well. And then some really quirky questions, usually the Oxbridge type questions. What can you do with a safety pin? And what can you, and how many grams how many grains of sand are there, in the Sahara Desert? Things like that. And that is testing logic. They don't want the answer. Okay, I don't think anyone knows the answer, but it's a case of how would you work it out? So logic.
Oh, thank you, Rizvia. That was really insightful, actually. I'm just going to break for one question that came up that Saba put in the chat. And actually, Saba's doing a wonderful job of answering a lot of the messages. Rizvia, I don't know if you want to answer this. Mm-hmm. If the interview does not last long and finishes quickly, is that favourable or unfavourable?
So I remember when I was interviewing, I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, one interview went through, so one went through quite quickly. And that was a student who perhaps, she was really stuck. Now, usually when you get stuck, we would ask a follow-up question, because we are actually, believe it or not, as interviewers, we're rooting for you. We want you to get through. It's not a case of we want to trip you up, but we want you to get through. So we will give you opportunity after opportunity. So, for example, why do you want to study medicine? And it was a case, very, very, quite literally, I really want to help people. I think I'm quite a good listener, and I like helping people. Okay, so then we would ask a bit more, and then we knew that was something that she was perhaps stuck on. Then we went to the next question, and really similar, monotonic, very, very limited answers, and then to the third. And it's a case of, even though we try our best to get you to answer a question which we feel that you could potentially answer, if you're not, we could take somebody to water, but can't make it drink, can't make you drink it, if you see what I mean. So it's the same kind of principle, making sure that you're answering as fully as possible. That way, sometimes the answers are quite short, they're very limited, and often means perhaps you haven't. However, I say that, but then I've seen some interviews that have been really quick, because people have given bang, full-on answers, no interruptions by the interviewers. I don't know if you've noticed this, Afrosa, and I'm just kind of like, poof, totally blown away, and think, wow, I'm going to stop you here because I've heard enough. You've got a 5 already, let's move on. And then it's the next one, they've got another 5, bang, let's move on. Okay, so it's one after another. And so actually, their interview lasts the same amount of time, possibly, as the person who's got a poorer interview. But then you can almost have that, you have that instinct whether you feel that you've done well or you haven't. Now, I must say that when you've prepared well, you will come across really well prepared, okay? And that will show through your confidence, the speed at which you're speaking, the passion with which you're speaking, and actually that will really count towards your final mark. So let's talk about that. Yeah, we can talk about that later. But yeah,
I agree with you, Rizvia. I think it could be either way. Either you're an excellent candidate and you've answered everything really well, and there hasn't been much follow-up, you've got your high scores, or you're not talking enough and that's why it's finished and you've done quite badly. In my own personal experience, it's very rare for a candidate to finish early and do fantastically, although it's been done. In my own experience, I would say if it hasn't gone well, it's usually a shorter interview. And as you say, even despite all the prompts and all the, rooting for them, sometimes they're just not performing well. So generally, I think if it's short, my experience hasn't been so popular.
And actually,
Right.
just on that point as well, sorry, Afrosa, is that actually often when you see a really good candidate, you really want to push them further.
Yeah.
And I tend to offer them some more questions, to be honest. And so they may be thinking, oh, I'm only going to get 3 or 4, but sometimes you kind of might want to ask them a bit more, and that won't necessarily prejudice them at all. It just you feel as if you kind of want to just kind of like get a little bit more out of them. So so that could actually make the interview last a little bit longer as well.
That's true. That's true. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about how you structure your interview answers. And this is really important because it's going to stop you waffling. It's going to stop you having those awkward silences where you've run out of things to say. So it's really important to have a structure. Now, this is something that I use, my own personal method. Rizvia, it'd be interesting to see if you've got a different one. But I like to use the STAR method. So I think the important thing with answering these questions is to add your own real life examples. So let's choose an interview question. When was the last time you made a mistake? So using the STAR method in my head, I would give an answer something like this. So in year 11, we played a local rival school at a football match, and there's always a lot of rivalry between this neighbouring school. And we had a match coming up, and my task is to mark the star goal person and identify who's the strong person. I do man-to-man marking. And the action is that usually we have a meeting beforehand, and everyone would look at the previous matches and they will identify who this strong character is in the opponent team. Who is the person that really motivates the team? Who's the person that holds that team together? Who's the person that scores the most goals? And we identify that person, and then I man-to-man mark. Now, on this one occasion, what happened was I slept late. I didn't hear the alarm go off, and I was late for that meeting. So actually, I didn't really know who I was supposed to be marking. And by the time the match came, I wasn't really sure of my job, and actually we lost 3-0. Now, immediately I identified that it was my fault. So I took ownership and I apologized to my teammates because I really didn't know what I was doing in that match. And they really appreciated that I was taking ownership and I took the blame. But then I reflected, how was I going to fix this for the next match? So I decided, well, I wasn't going to sleep late the night before an important meeting. I was going to go to bed early, make sure I had my alarm on. And then I told my mum, if I don't wake up, can you please wake me up? And then I decided I actually would approach the coach if I ever missed a meeting and ask them for some feedback and a quick summary, so that sometimes things happen, you don't make the meetings, so that I was caught up. And I know that as doctors, we're humans, we make mistakes, but this really taught me that if I reflect on something, I can act on it and hopefully improve on the next time. So that's a typical answer. And if you see, it's not a brief answer. It's not something where I say, I made a mistake, my team lost, and I felt really badly. It's got structure to it. Rizvia, do you have a particular method, or do you use the STAR method?
You're way too structured for me, and this is exactly the right way to do it. So I do it the same way. But I think that the most important thing is, especially when you're structuring an answer like this, is just to talk it through. Talk about the situation, as you said, the task, the action, and so forth. But the words here are really important. So examiners, interviewers love certain types of word. I don't know about you, Afrosa, but if anyone says to me that they've reflected upon this, or they've gained some insight about something else, I just feel that is something that is actually a really high level quality, and especially in 16, 17, 18, 19, 20-year-olds, okay, or even older, whenever you decide to apply for medicine. But that makes, for me, that is something that really works really well. But the words reflection and insight, but For sure, that's exactly the way. And actually having a solutionist approach is really, really important as well.
So
Okay,
I
so
think if you're not a structured person, this is a way of doing it. Find a way that works for you. This is just what I like because that's the way I like to think. But you don't have to use a STAR method. If you're someone who you think, okay, look, I just need to think of a past example, then I'm okay. So this is by no means all black and whites. Play with some things. For some people, it might be who, what, where, when, something as simple as that. But this is just something that I advocate. So just a couple of tips as well to structure your answer. Listen carefully to the question. Take some time. We absolutely don't mind if you want to take a few minutes, gather your thoughts. It actually shows that you're thinking. We like that rather than someone who's spontaneous and just kind of rambling on. Answer the question you've been asked, not the one you wish you had. So in that previous example, we don't want to know that you were the star defender or that you're the coach of the football and talk about all your leadership skills. That's not what the question was asking. So make sure you stick to the question. And if you get tangled up, for example, if the presentation isn't on show and you've only realized a little bit way, that's absolutely fine. You start again. That's life happens. And it's absolutely fine. There's not a problem. It's the way you come across. Apologize, start again. We understand you're human.
And just on that point as well, Afrosa, I often say, look, even if you don't need a minute, say, may I just take a few seconds, please? And actually taking a few seconds is, if you think about it, it gives you a lot of time. Humans process things in nanoseconds. So if you imagine, if you say to your interviewer, may I take a few seconds? 1, 2, 3. 3 seconds is a long time. Okay, take those 3 seconds. Okay, and the difference that you will find in an answer that you take that you do right from day one, right from time 0 to time plus 3 seconds, may be hugely. I mean, that 3 seconds will give you a huge advantage. So take it.
Okay, Rizvia, I'm going to pass to you again. I think that's valuable
Okay.
advice. Practical tips.
Okay, so before the interview, refamiliarize yourself with your personal statement. Really important. The last thing you want to be doing is for your interviewer, examiner to ask you a question based on your own personal statement, and you're like, did I do that? Or okay, oh yes, I remember. No, absolutely. Read your personal statement through at least 2 or 3 times so that you are very, very well acquainted with what you've written and what you've given. For many medical schools, many medical schools will have those up on a board, on an electronic board, that we can, as examiners, interviewers, see. In MMIs, they may actually even be printed out. Okay, so let's just be very mindful about that. Know the medical core. Now this is really important. Okay, I remember, I don't know if you've come across this, Afrosa, but I remember once where we interviewed a young lady for Barts a few years ago. And when we said, oh, well, what do you like about Barts? Tell us a little bit about Barts in terms of where it is and where we send our students. And she said, oh, she was hovering at around about a 3.5 out of 5 at that stage. And she said, oh, is Barts in East London? And she went straight down to a 1-2. Okay, so you have to know. The most important thing is actually knowing where the university actually is, the population it serves, the kind of teaching, the assessments. Is it 5 years? Is it 6 years? Is it a spiral course? Is it a linear course? Does it do any intercalations? Now, one big tip from me is that if they do intercalations, okay, find out which intercalations they do and actually get on board and say, well, you know what, actually, I really like the fact that your course offers an intercalation in history of medicine or physiology, because that's something that I'm really, really interested in. And and it will ping up on a interviewer's mind, thinking, my goodness, this person already thinks they're already in the university and they've gone for that. Any additional opportunities on the course, really important. Now, one question that I don't know if you've realized as well, Afrosa, I don't know if you've come across this, is that examiners will ask your opinion about how do you feel you can contribute to this university. So not what can we do for you, but what can you actually do for us? Why should we want you? Not just why do you want us, but why should we want you? So they're alumni who came out of that university. What can you offer to the university? And follow up on any medical developments making the news or within dedicated journals. In my last hot topics course, we talked about universities. We talked about how important it was to know about the USPs. The USPs being the unique selling points. Okay, we talked about Bart's USPs in the genomic program, Imperial in the modelling theories for COVID, and USPs. Cardiff, they love this sports. Southampton loves this. Their water sports as well. So knowing about the USP, Kiel was very, very keen on sustainability last year. So remember these things. These little tidbits really do help. Knowing about that. There's lots and lots of YouTube channels that you can find out about university and uni days. Okay, so find out if you can go. You cannot substitute going to a university and getting that feel, that vibe of that university. So if I can encourage you to go, please do go. Okay, why this university? Now, this is a slide that this is something that I always ask as well in my hot topics and my blast sessions as well. Not just why medicine, but why this particular university. You need to sell their university back to them, as to say, I want to come to this university. Why? Number one, TSR, so the student room. Fantastic results. Also, in conjunction with that, the Independent, I think the Guardian, and a few more other papers, they will give the official university satisfaction ratings. Okay, read those, find out what that university satisfaction rating is. Now, if it's good, fantastic, advertise it. If it's not so good, just mention that you've read it. It's still really good. A student union. Has it got a vibrant student union? Using those particular words, I've heard that Manchester, I know because I'm a Manchester graduate, has a vibrant student union. What is their USP? What are they famous for, and what are they proud of? Again, charity events. This week, I think, is official charity week. What are you doing? What are people doing in Charity Week at this moment? So these will be people, these will be students who are 1 year ahead of you or 2 years ahead of you. Again, student satisfaction rating, the city, really important. What is the USP of the city as well? Cambridge, let's talk about the River Cam. Kiel, the sustainability. Manchester, the vibrant. Everything about Manchester is brilliant. Anyway, how can you contribute to student life? Again, they want to know how you can contribute, not just what they can give you, what you can give them back. Why are we asking you these questions now? These questions. Why are we asking you these questions? They are asking you this question because they want to check your suitability. How much do you know? How much do you want this? How passionate are you about our university? Why do you want to come here? Okay, because if you're going to be, I think Bart's is it in the East End of London? That is a big, big no-no. It means that they've done absolutely zero research on this, if they don't even know where the geography is. Okay, so let's just be very mindful. Remember the people. Remember who is your audience. Your audience are people who have been picked by Barts, UCL, Manchester, Sunderland, so forth, and these are usually academics or doctors aligned to the university, or who have chosen to take their time out to do this. Now, remember, those people who come and interview you, we do not, I don't know about you, Afrosa, but I certainly don't get paid, and none of us get paid for that. So we are taking our time out to interview. So you can just imagine how we feel about those particular universities. Very proud of them.
Definitely don't get paid.
I don't either. I'll pass back to you. Or I can do this one.
Yeah, I think this is yours, Rizvia. Yeah.
Okay, so on the day, make sure you are absolutely on time. Make sure that you know where you're going. Get your sat navs out, please. There's no excuse for lateness. I would even go as far as saying, make sure that you are even an hour before time. Okay, because you want to settle your nerves, you want to look around the place, you want to familiarize yourself, you want to kind of blend in. Okay, and that is if it's an in-person interview. Now, if it's not an in-person, if it's an online, and actually a lot of interviews will be online, make sure, for goodness sakes, you must make sure that your technology works, that your laptops are charged up, that you've got a backup plan B and a plan C. Absolutely. Okay. I had somebody, I don't know about you, Afrosa, I had somebody who came in their golf jumper and scraggly hair, and I just thought, is she coming to an interview or is she going to a party, a golfing party or something? And it really, actually, right from the beginning, it really put me off. Whereas you've got others who have come in their suits and obviously they've made an effort, and actually that shows. Okay, please make sure that you've combed your hair, you've put your hijab straight, or whatever you're doing with your, with this, because you will have this part of you being seen up to about there. Okay, try not to wear your pajamas. The reason being is that I saw somebody who was doing a pre-recorded interview, and they wore a lovely shirt, and then they had their pajamas, and they had to stand up and put the video off so we could see all of that. So please try not to do any of that, please. Okay, try to keep calm. Remember, just as Afrosa had said, especially with the MMIs, if you aren't able to do one very well, leave it. Do not do a post-mortem on that station. Leave it. It's done. Okay, go to the next one. Keep calm. The most important thing is keeping calm. How you come across, the passion that you exude, the quiet confidence that you exude makes a big difference as well. And also reflect. Take that time, step back, reflect on what you have done and what you could have done better. Remember, you may have other interviews stacked up. Let's hope that you do have other interviews stacked up. And if you really don't do well on the first interview, do not repeat the same process. Reflect upon what you've done well, but what you've done not so well. And you must try to get somebody after that interview to see where you're going wrong. Okay, it's really important, because I don't know, first, I don't know if you found this, that I found some excellent candidates who have really not done very well on the first, and they repeat the same mistake the second, third, fourth interview, and bang, all 4 interviews gone. Do not do that. Reflect on your first interview. At the end of your first interview, see what's gone well, see what could have gone better, and then actually really work on that. Get help after that if you feel that it hasn't gone well. Some people are also a little bit deluded, I have to say, and they feel that things have gone well when in fact they haven't. So again, it's that reflection that is really important.
Okay, I think this is you again, Rizvia. You're
okay, and I'm just really mindful about the time as well. Pitfalls. Okay, all right. If you're not checking your IT, I think something came up in the Apprentice dinner a few years ago. If you fail to prepare to fail. Okay, so absolutely check. Make sure you've got a plan B and plan C. Make sure that everything. If you haven't got a laptop, if you have got one laptop, great. If you haven't, get a phone or something that you can make sure that if one doesn't work, that you've got something else that does. Okay, you absolutely have to be on time. If you're not, you've missed it. You've missed your chance, and that could be you've missed your chance for that university, and possibly even missed your chance for medicine in totality. Okay, do not even consider fibbing. Do not even consider it. Believe me and Afrosa, we have seen this. We're GPs. That's what we do. We interview people day in, day out, all the time. We will smell fibs a mile away. So don't even think about it. If you don't, just put your hands up. I'm sorry, I haven't done this work experience, or I haven't read that book. Okay, not knowing enough of the unit again. As said before, ditto. So those are common pitfalls. Should you ask a question at the end?
What do you think,
Okay.
Rizvia? What are your thoughts?
Unless it's a really good question, I would probably, well, actually, not unless it is. I would ask, and I would ask about, I think you've got a few, I think you've got something on the slide after that. It has to be a sensible question, and it has to actually make you shine. Make this an opportunity for them to know that you're somebody who's a thinker, who's already thinking about being placed at their university. Okay, surprise them, perhaps not in a really kind of like, don't shock them, but certainly surprise them, you know, with your insight and with yourself. And I remember once, actually, Afrosa, I went to an interview, and the interviewee, she said, tell me how. So I was on the interview panel, and she said, and we said, do you have any questions? And she said, tell me how do you guys all interact as a team? How do you get on? Do you get on well? And I thought that was an excellent question, because she's got her mindset already that, fine, I've got this job. I've got this. Okay. All right. And now she's thinking about fitting into our team, if you see what I mean. And I suppose, I mean, that wouldn't be applicable for medical school interviews, but you can certainly adapt it to say, how does it work? You know, how do interviews work? Or, you know, I think you can make up something that would fit well. But make sure that when you do ask a question, always prepare it beforehand. Okay, because they will always ask you, have you got any questions? Okay, some people say, when do we hear? Okay, that's a very, very common question. But then if you ask a very insightful, reflective question as well, that really will work well in your favor as well.
I think everyone, please don't ask that question now about fitting in a team.
We'll know where it came
that's
from.
An excellent question, actually. We've actually, that's the end of our presentation. Rizvia, do you just want to, I know there's a hot topics course you've got coming up. Can you just mention the interview blast course as well?
Yeah, yes. So
and how do they log on to these courses?
Yeah, so I'm so sorry that I haven't got the I haven't got the Eventbrite, but if anybody here is not on the Year 12, Year 13 group, it will be placed on there. I will be posting it up on a few, and possibly if I'm given permission, I can post it up on the OUJ as well. But the interview blast will be almost every single question that came up over the last few years, stuff that you will not get in books. It's going to come up in the interview blast. Now, depending on the uptake that I see, I may do 4 sessions, I may do 6. They're probably going to start early November, because I know that some people are going to be getting interviews towards the end of November, and I want everybody to have an opportunity to come to this. Anybody who's from a widening participation, widening access, please do contact me directly. You are free. You do not need to pay. I want this to be as wide as possible, and everybody is very, very welcome. It is going to be an affordable course, hopefully. Probably going to be, I think I'm probably going to stick to the £35 again per session, but that £35 will give you an hour and a half. Often we go on for a lot longer, because as you can tell, I've got a bit of a gift of the gab here. So we will go and we will get these questions done, and hopefully you'll be really, really well prepared for those hot topics. That is the medical interview blast. I've got 2 more sessions left for the hot topics. These are both on ethics, because I've already been through 4. We've got the last 2 on ethics, and then it's going to be the blast sessions, either 4 or 6 sessions, depending on what kind of uptake we have.
That's excellent, Rizvia. What I can do is, once you've got the details of the interview blast course, we'll put them up on the Facebook page. The link for Eventbrite for the hot topics course, we'll try and put that in the chat as well. I've answered most of the questions on the chat as they've been coming up. There's just one question I haven't covered. Rizvia, if you don't mind, I'll throw this to you. How should you answer the question, why medicine?
Oh, okay. This person did not come to my session last week. Anyone who's come to my session last week knows that I like my Latin. And one one way that I kind of the way that I like my structure, I like my frameworks, okay, because it's just the way that perhaps my brain kind of processes things. So I like the how do you put it, the acronym carpe diem. Carpe diem means seize the day in Latin. Okay, but it also incorporates everything you need to know about medicine and why medicine. Okay, but I have to say, please do not use this in a wooden way. So C would be things like, for example, the clinical aspects of medicine. You love medicine because of the clinical aspects of medicine. The A and the R, the academia and research, so the academic aspects and the research elements of medicine as well, and why you love that. You can link that onto an EPQ that you've done, or a MOOC, or something else, or your own reading. Again, the clinical stuff you would be linking onto your work experience. So you're personalizing everything. Then you've got the PE, okay, of the CARP. So the PE is how it aligns to your personal values. Okay, so I have been told that I'm a resilient person. You don't say I am a resilient person, okay, because people would think you're a bit of a kind of like, you're also a bit, a bit of a big head. So you would say that I have been told, or people have told me that I'm a resilient person. People have told me that I'm compassionate. People have told me that I'm empathetic. And then just as your STAR method, almost, you kind of adapt that and say, and this is why I think that. So the what, so what, and now what. Okay, so so using that as well, and then the D is the diversity that you see, the diversity of patients, but also the diversity of specialities and subspecialities. Okay, and the dynamic. I don't know if this is even a word. The dynamicness, or certainly the dynamic features of medicine. That is, and this is where the E comes in. I know I've not done the I yet, but the E is that is ever evolving. The I is the innovation, okay, and that is very innovative. Medicine is ever evolving. It's always changing. It has to change to survive. And the M is the most important bit. And the M is making a difference in somebody else's life. Okay, and that really just encapsulates why medicine is actually the one question that is asked almost everywhere. And it's the one question, I don't know if you've noticed, Afrosa, it's the one question that is answered probably the worst.
Yeah.
So hopefully that's giving you a bit of a framework.
Yeah, something that I try and tell candidates is a rule of 3, make 3 points at least. That's how long your answer should be. So with this why medicine, mention 3 points, then go into detail, something like that. But I think, obviously they've missed out on your course and they need to go back to that. Okay, we are coming to the end. I think we've answered all the questions on the chat. I hope you guys have found that really helpful. We tried to run to time, so we're just a little about 5 minutes over. There was just someone asking about the book again. You can get that on Amazon. I think 2016 is the last edition. And also I wanted to highlight a comment in the chat was about the MMIs. The preparation for MMIs and panels are essentially the same. So someone was asking, is this going to come in panel? Is this going to come in interview? Prepare for both. Okay, the prep is the same. I cannot emphasize enough Dr. Rizvia's interview blast course, not only from a professional point of view, but my own child has been through them, and I have not seen any course of the same caliber. And you're actually getting someone who's a qualified doctor, as well as someone who's sat on panels. As interviewers, we have training by the medical school. We know what the scoring system is like. So please do try and attend that. And if you can't attend, just keep practicing, engage in conversations with your family, your friends. It could be something about the news. Just get idea and practice of expressing your views coherently, clearly, with a structure. So all the best, especially if you're sitting BMAT next week. I want to thank Rizvia. I want to thank Sabah for being a wing person. And thank you for the OUJ Facebook group for hosting. And this channel, this video will be available on the YouTube channel of the OUJ group. Okay, bye-bye. Thanks, Rizvia.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Bye-bye.